Oh, Lord.
It's having a big party, it seems.
It can happen for local time.
I know. You got to blame the regulators for that. You know what I mean? Can't blame the regulators.
Yeah, that
They ain't watching the bank.
People only show you what they want you to see.
You gotta know what to ask for.
Here you are.
Hey, you need to know what to ask for, otherwise only show you what you want to see.
Right.
Sick. That is incredibly true. And I think sometimes we don't want to ask for something because we don't want to know what the result is.
Right.
Because we get the result, then we have to deal with it.
So much work.
Yeah. Or not deal with it because of the implications. I was just listening to Steve McKinney's show. He was talking about the high level of statutory corruption that is believed to be in existence in parts of the Bahamas today. It's an unspoken tragedy. And you have to be careful with whom you speak about it. Yeah, we are very small, everybody's related, everybody's connected, either by birth, blood, death, sexuality, sexual origins, all kind of stuff kick in. And hi. Hello.
Big room today.
Yeah, we're in the big room.
Take that.
Right in. What time we get some room?
So like 5
And
So who gave you time to change clothes and relax and all that crap?
I have to pay off.
Oh. Because I know normally these institutions don't give you time to breathe. The only time you get time to breathe is when it's time to go home for good. You're paid off. Other than that, it's a job. Speaking about problem loans, despite all the problem loans the bank said they had the last year and a half to 2 years, they are pounding about their profitability recently. Anybody saw that? They're huge profits.
Which bank is that?
All of them, except BOB.
They did the same
They've been
bank.
parting about that. They haven't been saying anything. Somebody's been blowing the whistle on BOB.
I didn't go to the bank.
Yes. Baby. Stop it. Okay, hello, who's online?
Kyle is here.
Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hello.
Okay, you guys. Your baby. You said baby brother.
I said, oh, really?
Oh.
Friendly.
Oh, indeed. Okay, Edgar's here, yes. The punch, Edgar. I keep telling folks, you can have classes by remote, you can have classes online, but there's something to be said about face-to-face. Folks can look at each other and talk and exchange directly. Yeah, like online, okay, you can do it, but it's,
Alright.
yeah, it's an egg. The punch said, Edgar, that the governor of the central bank is very concerned about the recent losses suffered by BOB again. These are losses that have been 6 million this time, for the third time in a row, and then after the fourth time, the total losses will be somewhere between 15 and 20 million, seemingly just enough to cover those unpaid debts that more than likely will be written off. And we know that unlike commercial banks, in a government-owned bank, once it's written off, it's what? Forgotten.
It is.
Who is going to be assigned to follow up? Okay? That is the question. And even if you're assigned on paper, who's going to be bold enough to actually proceed?
I would.
You have to put that with the agency.
I would.
Sorry?
You have to place those accounts with an
Collection agency?
Yeah,
Sure. And who will get rich from it?
the agency.
And only the agency. Because they'll hang and flap and flop and call Tingham and hang up and call back and hang up. and write letters and hang up, and file letters and file off, and hang up and file. But the balances will not be reducing. It's an interesting phenomenon. Okay? Because the bank has been losing somewhere in the range of $5 to $7 million each quarter for the last 3 quarters in a row.
A quarter.
Yeah, per quarter. So they're going to be right up there after 12 months in the $15 to $20 million range.
But you think they sold off the phenomenon?
Not yet. No, it's sitting there. See?
Why they sell it on?
No, because they can't.
Because Randolph, I think it was Randolph? Yeah, it was Randolph, who's not going to be here today, who says, oh, they're not calling me any bailiff documents or foreclose on my house. I have to call the PM. Hello? Oh man, come what? Call me right around 8 o'clock to remind me, okay? Yeah, the first, I think, 6. Yeah, Randolph, who was here last time, wanted to know if we were going to be talking about impaired and non-accrual loans. Hopefully we don't get to that today, that we'll get to it next week, so when he's here, because he needs to know that the organization that he works for has millions and millions of dollars in loans that have long been, well, I don't even know. They should have been classified as non-accrual. They are certainly impaired. Okay?
What's the difference?
Oh, well, non-accrual means that typically the customer has not made payments from 90 to 180 days. So therefore, it's out of the current loan category and into a section that we call non-accrual. That's what we mean by non-accrual, because we stop actually accruing interest from day to day, month to month. But we still want the money. We're still following up. We just take it out of that current section because payments are slow or not coming at all for some reason. That's non-accrual. Impaired loans are those loans that are not only non-accrual, but they are in such bad shape that it's likely that some or all of it will be lost. If you have collateral, you recover some. If you don't have collateral, you won't recover any or most. And so some of them, for example, let's say somebody has CCP. Let's say somebody has a mortgage, a loan balance for $80,000. But the collateral is believed to will only realize about $30,000. So potentially, how much of that loan is impaired? $50,000, because the likelihood of getting that is severely diminished.
Is that really realistic though?
If this can happen?
If everything's realistic, you have an $80,000 mortgage and collateral when you were
Sure, but Bank of the Bahamas has loans that has no collateral. They are unsecured. At least this one is secured to how much? $30,000. So you're gonna get something out of it, hopefully, when you sell it. But what about those loans that are unsecured? Those overdrafts in the millions that don't have any collateral. They are seriously impaired.
Do you actually get
Not to regular people like you and you and you and you and Kyle. Hell no. They don't want to give a $2,000 unsecured loan to regular, hard-working people who got paid. But certain other people in the Bahamas and in the world, because we're not the ones, we're just catching up. They can get thousands and even millions unsecured. And some of them, like some of our people here at Bank of the Bahamas and maybe some other banks that we don't know about, are going to get away with not paying some or any. Who the hell's going to run them down? Who will put them in court? Who will put the minister of?
I would.
Yeah, because but
Yeah, I
you just
would.
have to wait till they can see that.
Well, that's what's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
Then you have to wait and see, because they say PLP and FNM are the same. I don't know, that's what the pun says. Again. So, that's thing I'm waiting, and they made Jelly's help fund.
Yeah, but once you fund, not as far where it is in your fund.
It should
I
be.
think so, they still up.
Not necessarily, they have influence now. See, they may not have power anymore,
Yeah.
but many of them will still have influence. And sometimes, if somebody lets it be known that a certain collection agency, collections officer, lawyer, whomever is, how you doing? Is trying to take legal action, then somebody might conveniently intervene over a glass of martini, nonetheless, on a quiet Friday evening, somewhere in the bowels of New Providence. And then suddenly, all that work he did, he's a long guy. He had all that, get everything together, bailiff had the thing already prepared, like this. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing happens. Because somebody intervenes. So, problem loans are not problem loans just because people are not paying. Problem loans are problem loans because collecting it is not an automatic process. Even managing it is not an automatic process. That's why the quote-unquote consultants who come in,
They have to go through a process.
not only do they have to go through a process, but they have to be what?
Clued in.
Yes, on who to
Go to.
bother and who
They
not
shouldn't.
to,
They shouldn't.
you know. That's how it is.
Yeah, but you have to.
Because if you mess with the wrong person while you're consulting, then you won't have that consulting anymore. They'll bring another consultant who will consult the way they want to consult. And so if you have your baby home, how many children? One, your baby, how old is she? 4. See? They say, if you again don't do what we say, then you take your money. How you gonna feed your child? If you try to get a job anywhere else, whoever you go to, that's my boy. Is it really that bad? Or am I just being melodramatic? That's spooky.
That's worse.
Oh man, Chet, don't say that. I was just gonna check your name off as president and you said worse. And there's some truth to that, that's the problem. Sick. Spooky. Okay, Bev is here. Sick. It's getting worse. Randolph is not coming. Probably bogged down. POV stuff. Carla, is Bianca with you?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm with him here. How are you doing, Bianca?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Just fine, just fine. Did you have to deal with any problem loans today?
Well, I'm on vacation actually. I'm in Florida.
Stop the madness.
Say that.
Yes.
Boy, I tell you, we're right in the 21st century. What? I'm sorry, I have to indulge you. What part of Florida are you?
I'm Coral Springs right now.
Stop the madness. See, the reason why I ask questions because once upon a time I used to be a loan officer and a mortgage officer and a collections officer too. And when you do those things, you get used to asking questions. So as soon as the situation comes up, your natural instinct is to say, and as soon as you answer that, it says, and then you keep asking until you get an answer, or people tell you, shut the hell up. Or that's all they're saying. All right, way to go. So when are you coming home, Bianca?
Sunday.
You're not getting married before you come home, are you?
No.
Beverly has a nod for us. What the hell kind of question is that?
That's part of the plan.
Oh, okay. Because I know things are happening quickly. People do stuff quickly and then come back.
No.
You're not one of them. Of course, I'm being the devil's advocate. But you never know. Crap happens. All right. Enjoy. Thank you for hooking up anyway. This is really cool. I can't believe I'm part of the 21st century phenomenon. She's in Coral Spring, be over here, and Rhonda was not here. Rhonda was fighting. Yeah, putting out fires. Wow. As soon as we get to the page where we stop time, just say, there. Let's see if we're all on the same page. Let me just say something about this before I go on. High debt levels is a major contributor to corporate failure. Is that a major contributor to personal failure as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though we need to borrow, it's hard to exist in the current environment without having to borrow some money. So I don't think the problem is borrowing money. The problem is being what? Overly? Overly leveraged. Overly indebted. Overly. Because I tell you, if I couldn't borrow money, I don't know. Life would be hell. You have to be able to borrow. In fact, speaking about borrowing, my son was trying to get some, nitbits on the facets of life. And one of those things that came up was loan. So I guess one day he wants to get married, and then marriage means you need money. So I told him, since it's hard to do everything in cash, sometimes we have to get a loan. And I tried to impress upon him that, he should not what? Over borrow. Because after a while, you can find yourself where? In muddy waters. Yeah. So just get what you need and what you can. What's that other word? Yeah, what you can afford to pay. And then when somebody's kind enough to give you a loan, pay the hell out of it. Like pay it back as scheduled. Pay it back before the due date if you can. Because messing up your credit will ultimately do what for you as well? Drown you. A lot of corporations and people find themselves in that situation. They allow their credit to deteriorate. Like Chet always says, instead of coming to, they run away. Instead of telling the truth, they lie. And then a lot of times these problems that could have potentially been fixed, they don't get fixed. Because it's a problem. Alright? We talked about workouts the last time. It's always good to do things out of court if you can. It's even better to settle a divorce out of court if you can. True or false? True. If you can. Yeah, because once it gets to court, dog eats somebody's lunch. Do you think that there should be an across-the-board law that says whenever people divorce, it should just be 50-50, period?
No.
Why not?
Some people bring a little more than others.
Most time, who brings more? Still, at the moment.
The mama.
Yeah, so they're the ones who suffer still. Now, things are changing, so some chicks will be bringing more.
And
Then what happens then?
Then we change it to 50-50.
Then we change it because it's convenient. I feel like I live in a parallel world. It looks the same, but not quite. Yeah, it's going to be interesting as our women get more and more power and more powerful and get more and more of their own wealth. Yeah. And then guys will be getting married the old-fashioned way, for money. We'll be getting married for money then. The whole thing's going to be shifting. In the old days, chicks get married and then drop dead. If you take too long to die, they kill you. Or something, slowly rat poison or whatever. But now it's changing, so guys be looking around and say, oh, I get to marry a chick, I need some money. Is that true? Or am I just quoting stuff in the punch again?
Real men don't know that.
What do you think real women will do?
I know.
Yeah. The point of
It's
being
necessary.
Yeah, what's this? Yeah, anyway, it's got a lot of work out too. If you can do it out of God. But she's right. Her answers are exactly appropriate. Believe it or not. Yeah. Because that's kind of exactly what the environment is at the moment. Then your answers are not out of this world. Alright, settle out of court if you can. Work it out, because once you get to court, the judge will deal with it. And then we don't know how that's going to go. Alright, we talked about
I need a copy of this, please.
this one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what you need to do is
Yeah.
call or drop an email down to Miguel and tell him, give you the one for the week before. Do it on your phone. Has anybody worked for a firm that was overly ambitious in its expansion program? Anybody ever in life? Yeah? That did too much too soon? Did we have such a firm in the Bahamas before? That did too much too soon?
Yeah,
Which one that you can think about?
one that did too much too soon.
Yeah, potentially. At least that's how it seemed anyway.
Trying to get firm, I'm thinking about that, Wings, place,
Oh.
whatever that name was.
Oh, yeah.
No, they just failed. I mean, they only opened up one store and they was expanding it.
Yeah, but they was, I
They
think
just
they probably
failed.
borrowed all the money and
Probably,
couldn't
yeah.
afford to finance that.
But I think,
I think,
Yeah,
They
that's a
bought
very
mine.
good example.
I think the roads got them.
Yeah, they were the
They blocked
victims
up the
of.
roads, people couldn't come in to buy,
Speaking of the
they
roads.
couldn't handle the down period.
Yeah, they
Oh,
left the
they
cash
got-
flow.
oh,
That
they
was
got
sales
the
period.
bonus.
Killed them.
That's an over-ambitious expansion. What was it, Carcaronis, or whatever the name is. With the whole roads project, trying to dig up everything at once.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
taking 3 times as long as.
Yeah, that's true. That's another good example. It really could have been done a different way and caused far less stress and less money. Okay? But these guys just came and closed their eyes and seen and ripped up everything. Damn, we ripped up everything. We should have done that. It was too late. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, a whole lot of stuff can lead to problem loans, and then depending on what kind of organization you're in, if you can't get things together, you're out of business. Gone. Okay, Price busters.
Yeah, Brian Foster.
Remember them? Man, they were busting open on every corner just like web shops.
Right.
That's what I'm speaking about, web shops. You think they're gonna be overly ambitious too? Because everywhere you go now, you see more web shops and churches now. First we saw a church in every corner. Now we have a web shop between, I don't know, every 10 seconds.
Between the church and the
and it
store.
looks soft.
Yeah, and folks are building new real estate because they want vacancies for.
Of course. Crazy.
And I understand that even well-to-do persons are going to be getting money together to open. Born again even. Because web shop is such a what? Huge
Christian web shop.
cash
Call it
business.
the Christian web shop.
Christian web shop.
Yeah. And people want money
The
quick.
Christian dream.
Okay. Moving right along. Okay, I think we started here a little bit. That in the banking industry, a problem loan is either commercial loan that's at least 90 days or consumer loan that's at least six months, 180 days. This type of loan is referred to as non-performing, or as we were saying earlier, non-accrual. Okay. Jump off from here. We said before that the subprime situation was the big problem that led to these banks, especially in the United States and around the world. And even in the Bahamas, we had our share of crap too, as a result of this subprime, where we ended up, especially huge banks in the US, with huge amounts of outstanding debt that was not being paid because people didn't have any money to pay. Business slowed down, people didn't have the resources. And so these mortgages were just sitting there. After a while, payments started to dry up. Persons who invested in these mortgages couldn't get any more of their returns, and the persons who had the mortgages could no longer afford them, and therefore they just kind of left them sitting around. So banks had these huge debts sitting on their books. Okay. That's what the subprime was all about.
I didn't know, right?
I did well, I'll tell you, it's just like when people are in a relationship. When things are going well, you don't see the faults. Okay? Or if somebody's rich and let's say you meet you're already married. Are you married yet, Hannah? Okay, let's say you run into a rich chick. And she has money. But she has all kind of other problems too. She's a schizophrenic, she's whatever. But he's not gonna see that right away because he's what? Focused on the money. It's only after he moves into the mansion, see? And drives around a little bit, get up and get over the novelty, then he realizes exactly what his condition is. And sometimes that's kind of what happens. So when things are good, for example, lending institutions tend to be what? Over exuberant. And sometimes we tend to be a little more liberal, which is good.
You get me now.
Yeah, and nothing's wrong with being that sometimes, but still you have to be reasonable, even in being liberal. Because if something twists, then we find that we have some major problems. And then all of a sudden we go from a happy, and that's where we were back in 2007. Everybody was flying high. Flying so high that people were able to get loans for an amount that was greater than the value of their homes. So when the market started to tether, then all of a sudden, and then the rate started to change, yes. Then all hell break loose. Okay. And hence, foreclosures, repossessions, legal action, and God forbid, 160 million or more is still sitting on the books from way back when, out of almost $400 million. Or is it billion? Million. Yeah. In problem loans. Wow. That's mind-boggling. We're going to see some other interesting that. We'd rather that LOA to be standing where? Straight up. Is that guy going to get out in time? No. Okay? That loan is going to consume him. If that's a corporation, that CEO is gone. And all the stakeholders connected there too. That's the problem. Okay? That's why it's so important that when we're handling credit, should credit always have a policy governing it? Yeah, always. So that we don't go overboard. Mind you, don't get me wrong. I'm all for the guy who is a good customer of any organization. Personal, commercial, whatever. Who needs to go over the debt service, by 5% or even 10%. I'm all for that. Especially if what they want it for makes sense. Okay. The commercial guy needs it because he wants to put up another complex for web shops. Does that make sense? Sure, that makes good economic sense. Because we know as soon as a new empty building shows up, who's going to show up? Sabars and things like that. Because they want it. So maybe that makes good business nowadays. 20 years ago? Hell no. Because we were hiding then. We didn't want anybody to know we gambled. But now, okay. So I'm all for that. The problem is when we go way over for loans that we know deep down in our soul, or we go way over for somebody came highly recommended by the honorable somebody, then it starts to get spooky. Because now we know that not only are we not only lending outside of policy, but we're getting stuck with some other issues now, which will eventually lead to that same picture. Not a pretty picture. Can't say that he's not trying to get away, but it looks to me like it's too late. And that's what happened the last couple of years. It ended up being too late. Okay. So if you're a bank, your big business is lending. If you're an insurance company, well, lending may not be your big business, but lending is a what? Good part of your business, perhaps. We have an. Sorry. I'm gonna use my technology. Can't talk right now. Call you later. Done it? Sorry? Alright. Chet and Bev works for an insurance company. The big business in insurance company is probably what? Premiums for something? Yeah, premiums for something. All kinds of insurance. House, car, motor. What else?
Life and health.
Life, yes, and health. premiums, all that stuff. Now, if the insurance company is also a lender, what percentage of the business of insurance companies on average would you say represents lending? Only 20 would we say, guys?
Less.
Yeah, probably less than
5.
20, maybe 10? 15%. Okay. And that's not unreasonable, especially if you could do like 15% of great loans and just the rest is just an egg somewhere. So you can do very well with that kind of situation. If you're a bank though, then it's completely opposite, isn't it? All of a sudden, your big business is about what? 95% loans? And the rest, fees. Fees for this, fees
Actually,
for
the
that.
banks do insurances now too, so,
The banks are doing insurance?
yes.
When the hell did that happen?
You know, we do it.
You mean like that kind of insurance?
FCIB.
Maybe not health, but definitely life, home, car.
This
The
FCIB.
bank is doing insurance? So it's like a little captive thing going on. So when folks come and get more loans and go over there for the insurance,
No,
Y'all
I do
wanna-
it too. I would send it, yeah.
the lender gives the insurance as well?
Y'all advertise in the branch?
No,
No, it's
But then
a,
you just inform your customers.
yes, when they show up at it.
so if they got any walk-in talk or whatever.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Who you all
One
right
stop,
before?
huh?
Okay.
Yes, one stop shop.
Yes. I thought that was illegal, but never mind.
J.S. Johnson Security in General,
Yeah, they're doing brokers.
and
kind of
one
thing.
other place I remember, John Hunt.
Although things have changed. Doggone it.
So that's how you get around it.
Get out.
The thing up.
Not being able to sell insurance as a bank. You just refer them to the,
Yeah, you gotta try to discount something.
Yeah.
No, they wouldn't be carrying the risk there.
right.
It just
Yeah.
distribution point.
Yeah, like referrals. Yeah, folks are getting very creative these days in the 21st century. Alright, so yeah, if you're a lender, loans are your big business, problem loans is a big problem for you. Because the more of them you have, the more profit you will fail to have. And if you don't get control of them, you will eventually die. See? Losses can quickly erode what? The assets first. What are the assets of the bank in general? What's the biggest asset in the bank?
Loans.
Sure. Don't be bashful. Loans. What's the biggest asset in an insurance company? Yeah, insurance.
Premium.
So we call it a word like premiums maybe? Because premiums mean what? All of that. Yes. Premiums receivable. Why would the insurance company have premiums receivable, you think?
Because sometimes persons.
They don't necessarily come in. Some of us pay on schedule and some of us don't. Either way, that's what the business is. For the insurance company, for the bank, the biggest asset is the loan. Alright? And the more losses you have, the more impact it will have on your loan portfolio. And that's why if you look in the paper, for example, now you see all the banks trying to encourage folks to come in and borrow again. Reason being, the banks are very liquid and they need to build up their asset base again. Because it's been a while since folks have been coming in droves. Okay? That's for sure. The losses don't only create profits for the bottom line in the organization, but also it causes these people to get nervous. See? And when depositors get nervous, they can make a run on your bank. In fact, some of them are running on Bank of the Bahamas as we speak. I understand. Luckily, Bank of the Bahamas is owned by the people. That's us. We say the government, but it's really the people's bank. Isn't that crazy? And because of that, they can continue to function under these very adverse conditions. Does Bank of the Bahamas have any prudent lending policies to keep them from getting into these problem loans? Yes, they have.
This is not done.
But what is the policy if you're not doing what? Following it. Boy, that's a scary situation. Alright. Now here's what we know as lenders, CCPs. Whenever somebody comes in to borrow, we have to have a feeling before we book that loan that they are going to pay it. Now sometimes we have a feeling that they're not going to pay, but we sometimes still let it go. But most times we need to have a feeling that people will pay the loan. That's really the deal. Because the extent to which we exercise this feeling based on certain information will determine how well those loans are paid or what percentage of those loans will fail. And we're always worried about the percentage that will fail. Because remember, nobody is tested when things are good, neither is the organization. But when things start to go sour, then we start to get concerned. So again, we're always concerned. How many of these loans are going to go sour? We think and hope that none will. We also know that's not true. Some will. So we have to constantly be concerned when people come in to borrow, is this person credit worthy? Because credit worthiness will determine how many loans potentially will fail and those will not fail, go bad. Some loan officers give loans knowing they're going to go bad. But then that's not necessarily based on any what? Policy of the organization. That's based on some other agenda. Now, look at this thing at the bottom. You see, I want a binder to read that. Janelle, Donnell, Tennille. Do you guys want to know why I was getting name mixed up?
Yeah.
Don't say it. Here's how she writes her name.
Oh, God.
I'm gonna say like this. Should I do it to him?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, right now. Yeah, right now.
I know. And misery likes.
Company.
So this is how Tennille writes. That's Tennille. And if you need evidence,
This Wilkerson, really? Really?
if you insist, I wouldn't show the evidence. It's up to you.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
She feels very strongly about it. But take my word for it. That's her version of Tennille. So even though I know that's Tennille, when I look, I'm like, okay. I'm not kidding. Before you read it, Tennille, and this is her last name. It starts with B. That's the only thing I can make up. After the B is like that again.
Brownie.
Don't you dare hold that
Oftentimes,
against me.
the quality aspect of
Yes.
the loan is
Compromised, yes.
Compromise, given the conflicts between the originators of the loans, loan officers who
Uh-huh.
are sales driven, and the credit underwriters whose job it is to ensure sound loans are placed on the bank's portfolio.
Do you guys get that? As lenders or lenders to be? There's a little thing going on in an organization, especially now, where the lending environment is made up of two groups of people. Alright? The first group are the originators, the loan officers, who have what? Totals to meet. They have what?
Target.
Targets. And so therefore, they're going to be blind to some things that they probably should be. That they shouldn't be blind to. Because they need to meet those targets. The problem is, once they set up the paperwork and send it to the underwriters are not looking at it the same way they are. And so there's always this little discourse between the two. Do it, no, here's why not, here's why not. Because the underwriters are trying to make sure that what? They're the quality control people. The originators or the loan officers are the marketing people. Yes, marketing, sales. In the old days, the loan officer used to be both the salesperson and the underwriter. We did everything back then. Nowadays, it's split into 2 or 3 or 4, but for all intents and purposes, you have the originators and there's always some discourse between the two. As there should be, by the way. Okay? These people ought to be primarily salespeople, and these people ought to be primarily quality control people. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to end up with more bad loans than you would need or would even like to have. Not a bad thing to do. At least it gets people to talk to each other and share and hopefully come up before you give out those thousands of dollars and those millions. Oh my God, how much of money? And then when I go on to borrow $3,000 for school fees, regular folk, number 3,000, please, for God's sake.
No.
And they take you through the ropes. And you're locked really bad, they tell you? No. You're over the debt service by 1. That time they have a whole gang of problem loans sitting on the books that they could have very easily been made available to people who will actually pay them. And so you walk away frustrated once again. It's interesting. Alright, so what makes a borrower credit worthy? Well, if you're a company and you're in an industry and environment like Microsoft, does that make you credit worthy? Sure. Okay. What is a credit worthy industry in the Bahamas? Government.
You think so?
Yeah, even though they ag, people still do stuff because remember the problem with government is not if they'll pay, it's only
When?
yeah. So they, I guess you can, that's not a
Yeah,
bad
they
point.
payments ain't good thing. It ain't a good thing.
Even though they pay late, we still do
Yeah.
business with them, we don't say the hell with you. Alright, what about financial condition? What does that have to do with credit worthiness?
Ability to repay.
The ability to repay, that's it. Whomever you're lending money to, do they have the ability now and in the future to repay this loan? If we don't do a good job of that, then we're in trouble. If we do, then it can help us determine credit worthiness. Number 3, quality and reputation of management. Alright, by all means. If the management is reputable, see, and that kind of stuff, and they're known to be very good at their jobs in terms of maintaining the organization, we tend to want to give those people, those organizations loans. Those managers who might be a little sketchy. Let's say Flowers came for a loan. Did you give him a loan?
Yes.
No, she's cash secured, she still ain't sure. Cash secured, no problem.
I don't do businesses.
You don't do what?
But you know if
Before or after
Yeah.
He's one of the best
legislation.
businesses.
yeah.
I can't do business with him. I'm first grade.
He has a question.
I know, you can't, yes, I know,
He
but
can't come first grade, yeah, no.
Chad said
You
it's
need to let me
before or
something, that's
after.
what, you need to let me.
If it's before, what should you do? No. If it's after, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because remember now, well, if it's cash secured and they don't pay, then money just paid off.
Yeah.
Does the fact that they might be involved with all kinds of other funny people doing stuff, is that a concern?
Yes, it's reputation.
Yeah, you have a reputation issue even though you cash secured.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Okay, it's like being married to a rich killer. They're rich, but they are murderers. I said, what is it to be married to a murderer? She ain't care. She just checking for the money. She ain't know she can get a straight bullet anytime. She don't care. She just interested in the money. Do organizations think that way? You think when it comes to lending money to certain kinds of people and groups? Of course.
You may not even be able to collect it.
Speaking about problem loans and a bullet, I understand that
BC.
you read my mind.
So here's
What was BEC doing out there on people's
They
properties?
have female meter readers.
What were they doing?
Disconnecting the electricity.
Why do you think are disconnected account problem loans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, whenever we don't pay the light bill, it creates a problem loan account for BEC. A lot of people don't even see that. When people hear problem loan, they say, man, they ain't no bank. Or they ain't no bank. Don't talk about it that way. They're not a bank.
But they have
Of course, they have many, many problem loan accounts. Because any receivable that is not paid is a problem loan account. And banks do not no longer have the exclusive right to that title. Wow. What do they say? The people in Pinewood, what do? Held them at what? Something point?
I heard hostage, I don't know.
Oh, we ain't done yet.
No, they said a man came over with a shotgun and threatened them.
But I guess that's probably not
For
serious.
light?
Yeah, and then his wife called up on the charges.
Oh, Lord, that's what
So they cut them off.
they stay
cut
off.
them off.
That's it?
Yeah.
They stay off.
Well, that's spooky. The fact that that could even occur.
But why they just do it to the female or not the male?
That's assault with a deadly weapon.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that's a
Exactly.
criminal act.
Yeah.
They need to call the cops. And females are a little easier to intimidate. That's why. Guys are easy to intimidate with a gun too, but not as easy. Okay.
That's a tough symbol.
It is. And so now we have to be careful when we send our girls out to deal with problem loan accounts. Back in the day when I was a young biker and we had to go out to do repossessions of anything, we hardly sent female bankers out. For the same reason. We send the guys out to get shot and stabbed. I don't know why we have men left in the world after wars and stabbing and shit. How come we still have guys left?
Because they all reproduce a lot.
We reproduce? So that's an asexual reproduction?
That's why
It's funny how she said it, because y'all.
Y'all spread your seeds.
So how we get to do that now?
Huh?
How did we get to do it? Didn't we have to get Beverly's consent?
Not really.
What?
You maybe raped you?
Mm-hmm.
What a sick. Okay. Okay. Some strange stuff leads to problem loan accounts. Collateral is a good thing to have to determine credit worthiness. Why they gave those people at Bank of the Bahamas unsecured loans for millions is beyond me, but then again,
I think all of the rates unsecured for
no,
millions.
not all.
Just a portion.
But too many millions are unsecured.
Thank you.
And then a lot of other millions have security, but not enough.
Right.
They are under secured.
And then to the collateral may just not be moving.
Might not be.
Moving.
No. Depending, but those are kinds of things that lead to what? Under security, under collateralization. It's a problem. Wow. And no doubt, because of the source from which they came, we end up with the problems that they have. So you can see the kinds of things we need to think about. And whenever you don't think about them, well, we end up with stress. In this particular example, the word marginal comes up because sometimes we run into clients that are marginal. What does marginal mean? They are borderline. And we're trying to make a decision as to whether we should give them the benefit of a doubt. Boy, now that's an interesting question. That, even though we've gone through all the other stuff on the previous page, collateral industry and all that stuff, marginal accounts sometimes just ends up with us trying to make a what? Gut decision based on our experience and our background and our intuition. Should we give loan to marginal customers?
Yes, we should.
There are some that we probably could consider.
Yeah.
There are others that we should not consider at all.
Just remember about history, definitely not.
A bad history, not. But maybe just inconsistent history, maybe. Inconsistent meaning
If you marginal, everything else need to be in order. Everything else need to be in order. Everything else.
you can have everything else in order to be marginal.
Huh?
You can have everything in order to be marginal.
Yeah.
Okay.
What makes you marginal?
Yeah, what makes you marginal?
First thing is failing the credit score. Now,
Yeah, if an organization has a credit score system,
what
Yeah,
constitutes that? I still don't know.
Yeah, it could be your age.
age can be.
It could be your
Income is a big thing.
Age, income, how long you've been employed, and whether or not you are past credit history.
That's true, because you may have collateral, this, that, that. You've only been working for 7.5 months or 1 year or something like this, and yeah, that can make you marginal. Yeah, if you're a company and your balance sheet is not too strong, it might be weak, but you have fairly good cash flow. Yes, balance sheet wise, it's marginal, but the lender feels that there's enough cash flow coming in to handle this loan. And then given the nature of the business, yeah, we could do that. So yeah, so you can see where you can have all the tenants in place, but a lot of things are based on experience as well. Okay? In terms of helping us, especially when the cases are marginal.
But then you should make sure the collateral is
Adequate.
Wherever possible. Okay? The writers of this piece here are suggesting that if it's a borderline loan, we should do what? Reject it at the point of?
No return.
Yeah, the point of origination where the loan officer is. Why do you think that's the best place to reject it? Why not let it go to the bank where the credit adjudicators are and all that stuff?
A waste of time.
Yeah, because it's a difference at the officer level. They would have had the opportunity to sit and interview the client, so they would probably get a better feel. Once it reached to the back office, they just probably paying attention on what is the numbers and
That might be one way to look at it. The other way to look at it might be based on information that there's no doubt a borderline loan, and therefore we may as well stop it at the loan officer's point because it's too much time and energy and cost to send it to the bank to raise all the heavy questions, knowing very well that this particular account will not survive the test. No, it's too costly to let it go back too further back when it's a borderline situation, unless it's an extraordinary situation. An exception of some peculiar kind. Boy. So, if you want to minimize losses and keep your problem loans down, the first thing you should practice is what? Good underwriting. Meaning, the loans that you put on the books, try and make sure that they're at least reasonable. Some are going to be perfect, some are going to be average, some are going to be, but try to make sure that they're reasonable. Because sometimes some lenders, for example, give loans that they know deep down that it's going to fail. And I'm not talking about a political, I'm talking about a regular loan. That maybe they went a little bit too far in trying to make an adjustment. And since that's my auntie, sister, mommy, cousin, child,
See, that could come back to haunt you.
and oftentimes does.
If you have a trend of loans that are going bad, you're going to be investigated.
No doubt. Or-
like I said, it ain't worth it.
Or in any event, it's going to end up in your problem loan portfolio.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to be calling you and asking you as the lender, how the hell could you and the underwriters approve this loan? Now I'm over here in the jungle trying to do what? Call up all these affluent people in an effort to get the money. Alright, so good underwriting is a good thing to keep problem loans to a minimum. Active monitoring. If you see a loan looks like it's going like the first payment is late, that's a problem. Usually back in the old days, if a customer made the first payment late, the bank's policy was you call them in immediately. You don't say, oh well, they made it 5 days later, no problem. Hell no. There was a standing policy that if the first payment was late, whatever the reason, no matter who died, the policy was bring the customer back in and do something that we called reclose the loan. Reclose it. In other words, treat it as if they're just closing it for the first time. Go through all the programs again. And this is after determining why in the world would the first payment be late. Because that is as spooky as hell. That doesn't mean all the other payments will be late. Doesn't mean that. It just means that it's a kind of what? Precaution. It's part of the monitoring process. If you see an account a few days late during the year, it may not be a problem, but you have to be checking it. Checking it from time to time, make a note of it. So that you can see every month, okay, is it later and later? Or is it later, early, early? Early, late, early? Whatever the case. You heard something?
You moved the clock. You moved the clock. Did you move the clock?
That would be Miguel and company. Unless somebody, a student needed a clock
7 o'clock.
Tracking the time.
and took it.
Tracking the time, man.
Maybe that's why somebody. Okay. So active monitoring. I think I'm probably rolling the last minute with Kentucky or something. Throw it in the room. Active monitoring is very important. Early problem loan identification. That's what the reclose thing was about. It's not good enough to just book a loan and say, thank God it's booked, to hell with it, I'm out of here. Yeah, that's what we do, actually.
That's our intention though.
We do it with all good intention. But again, and that's fine. It's just that the idea is that you don't kinda take a loan for granted if it starts coming up doing unusual things. Okay? Oh, well, that's not my area anymore. To hell with it. No, if you're a lender and it came up, it may not be your area anymore. But you still need to raise a question. Call the people in the other side. Hey, have you noticed the activity of this account? I what account that is. Call dog account. Alright? And so everybody's involved in the what? Identification process. And if you can catch it early enough, then you can take not only corrective action, but yeah, that's what reclosing the loan was considered to be back in the day. Aggressive action. Because whether you believe it or not, contacting a customer who just got a loan because they were late with the loan first payment is not necessarily a routine procedure. Not really. Because customers are a little put off by that sometimes, even though they might be late. So my people can't make one payment late.
Not the first one.
Exactly.
Not the first one.
And our answer would be, no, John, Mary, not the first one. I need you to come in. What? Cool, I can be fine next one. We know. But it's the bank's policy to call you in if you are late. Okay, Jackie, they thought you was a fool. They think you came in quickly, you could have been under attack.
Wow.
I'm really sorry.
Yes. Well, we know what the object of this module is. We can move on. Let's discover how to find problem loans and deal with them. What are the early warning signs? Develop some kind of program to prevent, identify, and manage. That's what we're moving into. That's what we're always into. What's going on with these two people? Anybody read that? If they don't respond to our final demand for payment, send them a absolute final demand for payment. If they don't respond to that, then send them a final absolute final. Has anybody ever found themselves in that situation before? All the time. If you work in lending anywhere, somewhere along the way you'll find yourself there. In our efforts to what? Either correct a problem loan account or close it down for good. The final, absolute final. Sick. Alright. Don't worry, if you haven't been there, you'll get there. Alright, the other thing about keeping problem loans to a minimum has to do with credit investigations. A lot of times when we're preparing loans, we don't do our homework well enough. Depending on who it is, what our totals are, and how anxious we are to get some totals on the books. We only do a halfway job. Now in the US, they don't only do a halfway job, they do a complete job. In fact, they have all kinds of credit doggone bureaus all over the place. Credit scores. You have credit scores in Bahamas?
Nope.
Not yet. Not yet. Should we have it?
Yes.
Nope.
Yes. You think so?
Man, we can have it. You think credit scoring will help to keep problem loans to a minimum?
I think so.
Maybe. Eventually.
Eventually, but getting to that
My
point.
grandchildren, yeah.
You're not ready for that.
It'll stagnate your credit market
Yes, it
for a
will.
good while. But then,
Okay.
and it'll probably bring things to light in just how bad it really is.
Yeah, but yeah, and no, except that there's only one problem bigger than how bad it is, and that is what? The stagnation of the credit market. Can you imagine?
Of the legal credit market.
Yeah.
Because you have no job, because if you can't lend, I mean.
And then if that becomes if the legal side becomes stagnated, then who's gonna take over?
The black market.
And then all of a sudden we have another problem.
Crime. More crime.
Okay? Yeah, then we have non-financial institutions who are not authorized to act as a bank, acting as a bank or a lender.
They can lend, but they are financial institutions that can lend. They're not a bank, but they can do that.
Who regulates that?
No one.
But yes, they are the Securities Commission.
The Securities
And the Financial
Commission
Corporate Service Provider, yep,
are supposed to be monitoring now.
yep.
Oh boy. Yeah, and it's getting interesting. Alright? Credit Bureau, man, how many people will no longer be able to get a loan? Too many. Then of course portfolios are going to start what? Shrinking. then there's gonna be slowdown in the what? Consumer market. More kids are gonna have to come out of private schools. 1 or 2 private schools may have to even close because people can't afford to borrow school fees anymore because they're on the hit list. When you call that bloody bureau and they talk about what your credit score is, because once the bureau comes on that crap, then eventually you're gonna have credit scores and all that stuff. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the credit score situation in the US, but they take it very seriously. If your credit score is not what they want it to be, dog, eat your lunch. You live a pauper's life. No matter what your ability is to pay. See, that's the other thing. And you have to go through a whole process before you can actually get back into the credit market. So I don't know. We have to see how that goes. But credit score is a big thing in terms of credit investigations. Does your customer live up to the credit score expectation? Do they qualify? Because you see, in the US, credit scores determine what?
Interest rate.
Interest rate. Well, qualification in terms of whether you get the loan. Let's say you get past the first hurdle. They say, fine, you're an okay credit risk. But because of your score, you have to pay a higher rate. Because of your score, your monthly payment has to go up. Because your term is going to be shorter. That's what happens. So even if you do qualify, it's under very what? Extreme situations. And so again, this will be very discouraging. And it will cause a lot of people to what? Pass off. Or not have the ability to borrow this money. Okay. For example, look at this situation with the FICO score. If you are somewhere down in 350, 400, you are considered to be a what? Extremely high risk customer. Across the board, no matter where you go in the United States, north, east, south, and west. As huge as that country is, the minute you say you want to borrow, they jump in the system. What do you think will happen if you're not in the system? Not necessarily. And if they are, they're scrutinizing you as a brand new. And everything in the book will apply. Absolutely. Okay. But not to fear. If you're somewhere in the 6, 7, 8 category, you can go from a low risk to extremely low risk and get your
Good rate.
good rate, good payment, good anything you want. Okay. Ah, interesting. Credit scores. That's where we're headed. Because we're doing everything. We're looking at setting up a credit bureau. We're looking at, what else we're looking at doing, man? We're looking at, what else?
Sharing the information across borders.
Yes, automatic information exchange. Not just inquiry, automatic. What other incredible thing we're going to be doing next? Because we're copycats. Or the world is forcing us. Which one? What's the other thing? Secrecy is dead. Unfortunately. Well, that's dramatic. Secrecy is now dead. There's no such thing as bank secrecy anymore, except to the extent that we still ought not, we have confidentiality left. Yeah, meaning that we can't go around yip-yapping about people's personal affairs.
No.
I can tell you a thing or two. Some folks still do it. Legally, we shouldn't do it.
Like everything in paper.
Okay? And then 4, any other dramatic issues coming on stream other than time? Well, that's pretty dramatic. What I want to be next when I'm finished this job I'm doing in my life, I want to be the next VAT commissioner.
Yes.
Heavy, yeah, that's needed.
And I want all of the perks that are due to the current VAT commissioner. Is it possible to become VAT commissioner without being a political animal? Like a regular folk like us? Can we just walk in and say, I qualify to be a VAT commissioner, I'd like to have a job? Will they pick you?
No, it's never happened.
Bring your freedom of information, but then nobody gets it.
Why does the VAT commission think have to be a political animal? Not have to be, but why do you think that would be the case in many cases?
Make sure they,
Right, carry out their mission.
Yeah, political animals like to make sure that they have other political animals who will not make a big fuss about every little thing, like every big thing they want done. If you are objective, then folks, they have a problem with that. That's why we came up with the term political cronies, plural. Not just one political crony. We have political cronies for the same reason, because they are something like that. That's what I want to do, the fact commission. The Punch even said that somebody said that the commissioner's $120,000 salary is not enough for him. He needs more.
you get big one of them.
Commissioner,
What?
The VAT commissioner,
Who's that?
like what?
the only one I know. So while we're over here arguing about credit bureaus and scores and all that, we have that going on.
They go get the kitty.
Okay, so what is your credit score? This is for regular folk, regular commercial borrowers, regular consumer borrowers, regular folk. The other folks are operating outside of the, yeah. Okay, so this is for us. What is this credit score all about? Typically, if you're curious, the credit score is an assignment of a number, a percentage, or whatever. You know, the 30 got over there. That will determine whether or not somebody's eligible for a loan. Again, this is just one example of how a credit score could work. For example, 35% of something might be assigned to somebody's payment history. So if you have a great payment history, you get the maximum. If you have a bad payment history, like bankruptcy, late payment, that 35% could be, hey, 35% out of 100, you're getting closer to 100% of not getting the loan. Or, if it's the other side around, you're getting closer to 100% of getting the loan. Amount owed is given a percentage. Qualification. Which one is that? 30%? Oh, yeah, it's over there in the corner. Okay? 30%. Again, these percentages are not etched in stone. Every organization will come up with their own scoring system. Okay? Based on these different criteria. If you're great in these categories, your scores will be bad, will be good. If you're not so great, your scores will be not so good. Okay? And notice the key points. Your history, how much you owe around the place, how long have you been borrowing, the new credit position, okay, in terms of are you new, you just started getting started, and then what type of loans do you have out there? You have 3 credit cards, 1 mortgage, 1 this, 1 that, all of these things are adjudicated upon in terms of determining your credit score. And why is all of this done? Because they're trying to make sure that they keep their problem loans to a, yeah, that's really what it's all, that's what all this work is about. And all of this is done during the investigation stage, so that you can see what's going on. So that when you go to the doctor, it's okay, first of all, have a blood test. And there's all the blood test is showing something, have another test. That test is showing something, that's kind of like what's going on. Because they're trying to evaluate your situation to see if they can come up with a diagnosis that is either good, bad, or ugly.
It would have been good if I could, what is it?
Yeah, they need something dead bad. But the only thing they need better than the credit score is somebody with the will to implement. Because you can have it in place, but if you don't have any will, remember the old people said, only where there's a will, there's a way. So if you have it and you're not doing it, well, mind you, don't get me wrong, they do have lending criteria at BOB. It's just that not everybody's subject to it. Okay? We are subject to it. But take on them are not. Okay? They're not. So we have a double standard apparently. Alright? So, just behind the issue of credit scores is the issue of credit ratings. So you can have a score that eventually leads to a rating that eventually leads to a decision as to whether or not you should get credit, which is designed to keep problem loans to a minimum. There is method to the madness. Okay? And basically, whether it's commercial loans or otherwise, you can classify credit ratings into three basic categories if you want to be fancy. Okay? First of all, we have this rating of the probability of default, which means that the likelihood that the customer will default, it will be, we come up with a percentage. And where do we get that percentage from? Do we just pull out of our hat? No. Yeah, from the score and from other work and checks and experiences and exactly right. Job letter and credit history, and but primarily, yeah, the scores. Because under the scores are all those criteria. And they help us to determine which of these categories we're dealing with. So you have the PD, then you have the LGD. What's that? Loss given default. How is one different from two? Likelihood of a default as opposed to magnitude of loss. Are they not the same?
No.
No. The magnitude of the loss suggests what?
After.
Size. Default suggests, okay, fine. We have a problem, the loan is not being serviced, blah, blah, blah. But magnitude means what percentage of that particular facility or portfolio are we likely to lose entirely? Because remember, by the time a loan becomes non-accrual, it means that they're no longer sitting in the current loan category. So non-accrual starts to suggest that we've gone a little bit beyond what? Default, and we're moving towards the extent of the loss. Okay? And then finally, we have the EAD. What is that?
Exposure and default.
Better known as our expected loss. And usually, the expected loss is in dollar value. So up here, while we're still trying to estimate where things are going with an account or a portfolio of problem loans, we talking percentages. Oh, I think 35% of the loan. Oh, we think that whatever the percentage we think it is. But by the time we get to the EAD, the expected loss, we have to convert our percentage concepts into dollar values. Because remember, we cannot report a percentage on where? The balance sheet of the organization. These percentages have to be converted to dollars. And so by the time we get to 3, we need to know for sure who those problem loans accounts are and what are their existing balances. So when it's time to express those defaults and the magnitude of the loss and the expected loss, we're no longer in percentages, we're talking money. That's where the heartache is. Because as long as you're talking percentages, everybody thinks it's cool.
Yeah, but at what point do you use this at the beginning of the loan? Do you use that or when you are...
This rating situation? That's a good question. Should we do this at the beginning or the end?
Continually.
Banks
Say it
do
again?
this.
Continually.
Banks do this throughout.
Yeah, it's rotating from the very beginning straight to the end. Yeah, like that. Because you're constantly doing what? Assessing. Okay? So this could be something you think about during the investigative stage, something you're thinking about while your loans are on the books, and then certainly something you're thinking about if you start seeing a loan or a portfolio of loans start to slide.
That's why banks provision. Because
Yes.
if they foresee an expected loss, then they have to provide for the shortfall.
And again, provisioning tends to come down somewhere down the line. But that doesn't mean that you cannot feel a provision coming on early. Some people know when they put on the loan that it's going to be provisioned eventually. But generally not. Okay? We tend to see provisioning later as we see the loan deteriorate more and more. The payments start coming in later and later. The lying starts increasing more and more. Then we start saying, you know what? This loan is not only impaired, this is in trouble. We need to find out what percentage of this is good, that's based on our estimation, and what percentage we believe is not good and therefore needs to be provided for en route to what? Ultimately, writing it off. God forbid. What do you think might be a prime criteria for determining whether a loan, a portion of a loan is good as opposed to not so good? What do you think might be a criteria that we might use to help us do that? Collateral, yes. Excellent. If we have a certain collateral, certain type of collateral, cash to some extent, real estate, a yacht, or some crap like that. Yeah, luxury item, expensive painting. That's legit.
Them said ain't gonna be bad.
No. Why? Because?
I'm doing credit for you, this one. You gotta worry about the second to be funds for you.
You mean if folks you try to cut off the light?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, collateral is definitely a significant thing that we consider in terms of something tangible when we're thinking about how much we should provision to keep and how much we should provision to write off. All right. PD, LGD, and EAD. Wow. Interesting little gang. And yes, they should be in your mind across the process from the very beginning. When somebody comes and you take an application, the first thing that should kick in your head is, what's the PD here? Even though it's a new facility. Okay? You can look at the information that they give you and come up with some estimation as what the likelihood of default is with this. So the person has been working 6 months in a very volatile employment environment. You might be thinking PD right off the top. And that thought about PD might cause you to what? 110, yeah. 110, decline. Okay. So yeah, it's an ongoing process. Alright? Other organizations use a different kind of classification. For example, they begin with minimum risk all the way up to a complete
loss.
Yeah, complete loss. And the reason why we end with loss, because doubtful is spooky, but it doesn't mean that all is lost yet. Okay? Sometimes doubtful accounts can be recovered. Sometimes a significant portion of it can be recovered. Sometimes only a small portion. And so, yeah, we're doubtful, we have a great feeling it's going to go to hell, but we keep being hopeful, we keep working it to see if we can get the maximum out of it. Once it gets to loss, 8, or whatever the number is, then we presume, well, all is lost. It was a problem loan account. We have written it off. When you've written it off, does that mean that you don't follow up anymore? If you write it off, should you still follow it up? Yeah, organizations continue to follow. For years even, long after it's been written off. Yeah, trying to get something, and in some cases try to get all. When they can't get all, they try to get some. Sometimes, you can't get what? If you can't get anything, well, eventually they give up. Or the statute of limitation kicks in. 7 years for loans. Okay? The problem is, up to that 7 years, they can go ahead and try and get you to recommit. Let's say you haven't paid in 6 years, and someone to get you and pay $10. Please just pay 10. We know things tough, put 10. And you pay the 10. Then yeah, it starts the cycle over again. So the lender has a fresh 7 years to make an effort to collect the payment. So sometimes, yeah. So even though it's doubtful, and even though sometimes it's lost, quote unquote, doesn't mean that all is lost. Every now and then you get lucky. Okay? Even after the statute of limitations are passed, every blue moon, some lenders are able to get a customer for whatever reason, ignorance or otherwise, to do something, and then they get a fresh 7 years. Okay? Wow.
That's why they would say, whatever you could pay it for a year, and then they would go back and reassess it.
Of course, even if it's not a year, just pay it once, a few times. Once you've made a commitment to the account, then you are committed again. The lender has a fresh 7 years in which to collect that account. either by you doing it voluntarily or as far as taking legal action against you. Now the question is that we have had is this. In the Bahamas, no less, let's say the statute of limitation passes on. Customer owes you $23,750.31. And the statute of limitations is passed. You cannot get the customer to come in, make any payments, so you can get a fresh 7 years. The question that we still have swirling around is, should the bank still be telling other lenders that you have a balance outstanding?
Yes.
I don't think it's illegal.
Should it be illegal?
No, it shouldn't be illegal.
After the statute of limitations have passed. See, remember, the statute of limitation period is to give the lending institution what? Ample time. Not only to collect it voluntarily by the customer, but also to do what? Sue. And so the suggestion by the statute of limitations is that if you don't do that, lender, then you don't have a right, quote unquote, to collect it any further. And if you don't have a right to collect any further, then you shouldn't have a right to disclose it.
Yeah, but most times they
What?
always take on.
But the balance is still there. It still hasn't been paid.
Yeah, but you can't
Right,
disclose
no.
confidential information under any circumstance.
And right in trouble.
See? Especially if it's a loan that is not what? On your books and the statute of limit, not necessarily on your books, but the statute by law. You are unable to recover it unless the customer voluntarily comes in. But what happens is some lenders, they have a little statute barred blacklist. So because when they fail to collect it, they still use it to what? Choke the customer to death by disclosing a balance outstanding on and about an amount that is already statute barred.
Now, are we talking about lenders of the same organization?
No,
Or
exchanging between organizations.
That happens every
highly
day.
illegal?
That happens every day. Whether it's legal or illegal, it happens every day.
Should it be happening?
It shouldn't be happening, but it is.
See?
Because your customers out there, they're being declined by other banks for maybe something that you would have had with those banks before, and then they
Before is fine, but are they statute barred or not?
No, I mean, talking about stuff that's still on the books. Like
If it's still
stuff
on the books, that's a different story.
Right. So they will come to us and be like, okay, I want to borrow $10,000, and if you don't check, bank or from a bank, whatever, you're gonna get one, you probably default again.
Probably.
How do you check? You call up your buddy.
Yeah, how do you get
Yes,
that
I do.
information?
You have to call someone you know, I don't have to really count that.
Yeah, you have to. That's why I have to
Your contacts.
Yes.
But really, you should ask your customer to go in and do what?
Get a reference.
Yeah, get a reference.
$25.
That's okay, but you shouldn't be calling to get information illegally.
15. Correct.
Yeah, but they're not gonna know why you declined them. That's
Most
right.
customers, no, but do we have a duty to tell the customer why they declined?
To a point.
Not really. That's your money.
We just don't know your business.
To a point, you just be.
We don't have to tell them anything. It's declined, get the hell out.
Right, because you really ain't doing no business with them or some shit.
I know, you may not be doing business with them, but you might be doing business with their children who are good. And all their children, their auntie, cousin, children, they're all good customers.
Yeah, but then they know why you declined them.
Doesn't matter, but remember,
One buying and take all your business.
you gotta be careful. Because remember, even though that customer individually might not meet your criteria, that doesn't mean that they're not affiliated with people who are.
Yeah, but that's why I say you be polite about it.
Well, yeah, polite will help. Should we tell them why they decline? The whole truth and nothing to do, or just a half truth?
A convenient truth.
A convenient truth, the C one,
Give them the most basic reason.
the most basic. Yeah, you wouldn't say that we called the other bank and they said it's a
No.
statute bar account.
There you go.
Why won't you tell them that?
When requested, demand it.
Because you got that unofficially.
Yes, you got it unofficially.
Just make sure you tell them you denied them through their race, their age, their sexual preference.
Yeah, don't go there. Don't throw any of those in, because you throw them in, they might get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay? As simple as your conversation might seem, a shrewd customer may end up suing you, by all means.
They don't even get the money.
Especially, and we can really, really get bad when we're not getting it. And then we discover there's a loophole. Somebody said they declined it because.
Look at the lady.
What's difficult there is there are times where you'd have somebody who is a borderline individual, who if you could sort of coach them and say, you know what, if you could only improve this little area and you came back, we'd be able to do something.
Indeed.
Some people are nice like
So
that.
that's
And that's kind of,
good.
yeah, we should
But then-
always do that.
But then there's other circumstances where it just isn't.
Yeah.
And, you know, to go into that and elaborate on all of that and just say, you know, your dream is just a pie in the sky, you know,
Can't say no.
you can't do that either. So, I mean, you kind of get yourself in some funny places.
Yeah,
If
it can get a little gray sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you just try and find some middle of the ground thing where you say to the customer, I'm sorry, but yeah, you basically don't meet the criteria that the bank wants, and we can't
The
do
good
it.
thing is now a lot of the banks have segregated all of the duties, so you could just blame it on head office.
Sure, head office declined it.
In that night.
Did they send a reason? No, they didn't. And then leave it like that, see what happens. Okay? But again, it probably has more to do with how you relate the information
Right.
than the information itself that will determine whether or not the customer might come back again to try it again when things are better, or when they might, or whether they might go to some other people and say, hey, I couldn't get my loan, but they treated me with respect. You should go to that organization if you want to borrow money, because at least they handled you like people.
And the other problem too is if you tell them, you know, if you were to resolve this issue and come back, that we'd be okay.
Yeah.
The problem with that is when they come back, they may have resolved one issue, but they may have created a different issue. And so now when they come back, you say, I'm sorry, I still have the same help. Well, you said if I did this,
Yeah.
it's you. So now you're opening your company to sue. So don't tell them.
They use that for the.
Yeah, it can be tricky. We
That makes sense.
have to find some prudent way without putting our feet in our mouths. Okay? For sure. Carlisle. Carlisle.
Kyle,
Yes,
There you are.
yes, sir.
Okay, just checking. Where is Bianca?
Right here.
Okay. Have you had room service yet, Bianca?
I'm not staying in a hotel.
Oh, you know? Oh, what a shame. Don't tell somebody serve you anyway, you're on holiday.
Yeah, but I'm doing that.
Oh, darn it. Alright. So having said that then, how do we go about step by step, little by little, with all that information swirling around in our heads, trying to solve problem loans? Well, somebody came up with the W's. The 5 W's of collections. Pretty straightforward, I guess. They tell us something we already know. When credit goes bad, this becomes a woe. Why do you think woe would mean as in what? The old Bohemian song. Woe is? Yeah, woe is bad. Shame and scandal. We don't play that stuff anymore. Alright. So the 5 W's of collections for problem loans. First of all, the first W you should ask yourself is, when did the loan go bad? A lot of times people don't really care about it after it's gone bad, but that's important because the when tells us a little bit about the history of the delinquency, the history about how it got to its present position, and sometimes the history helps us to make better decisions going forward. W number 2, who messed up? Who's gonna answer that question? In the organization, like who? Boy, nobody wants to admit it's me. Who's responsible, the originator or the underwriter?
Depends on the nature, depends on why.
Yeah, it depends on why. Yeah, 2 depends on 3. Okay. But who's the tricky one? Okay. Who messed up? And?
But really and truly, the originator doesn't make the decision.
That's true, they don't, not based on what we know.
But if
No,
the
but
originator
decision
doesn't
is
do the
based on
appropriate
what
due
the
diligence,
Originator did.
if the originator doesn't do proper due
Right.
diligence, then they put the adjudicator.
Right.
Okay, but I know we have a verification body, so.
Okay, then you have an intermediary.
Yeah,
So
those are bad.
maybe it may rest then with the verification department. That's it. So you have the originator, the verificator, and the adjudicator.
Yeah, but I'm talking about what you put in the system is what you don't put in the system.
Right.
Aha, that's the other thing.
That's
Did
why
you
I'm
get
thinking-
all the information? Did you record it correctly? They said 3, you put 5. They said 1, you put 7. Oh,
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
they there for, they check, they literally check application, they put whatever checks or whatever inside the documentation.
The verificator.
Yeah,
verificator.
when you put it forward, whatever's wrong with it, they send it back to us to amend.
To amend it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, unless.
Pretty interesting check and balance.
So
Okay.
what about when I tell you when you ask me if I have any loans?
Oh, we can find that out.
Yeah, but I have a loan in Central Bank. You don't know that. You can't find that out.
So,
I know that.
okay.
She worked for the
Not-
KGB. So I'll find it. I know folks.
That goes back to that whole credit bureau issue, because you can conceal your
Judge,
loans.
just the people being hit a lawsuit.
Lots of people conceal loans.
Use somebody with
Lawsuit for,
disclosing information.
oh yeah,
No, that credit unions.
Yeah.
boy, yeah, that issue again.
And you'd have to look at the person and say, you so shady that I need to call all
Necessary.
my contacts.
Listen, if you're shady, you ain't get past me, first of all,
Sometimes
so.
it ain't necessary.
Huh? You know what I'm
Sometimes
saying?
it ain't necessary. It's supposed to salary is a salary reduction.
What you mean, to another institution?
Yeah, salary reduction.
Coming to
For
what?
you,
Come to us?
Yeah.
Does salary deduction protect you indefinitely over a 30-year period of time? What happens if you lose your job?
Yeah, exactly.
well, no, for
What
sure.
happens if, well, what
Well, for
happens if-
consumer loans.
Yeah, for consumer loans, it's great short term. Now, if you have a long term, like a mortgage,
Even for course, yeah, you get salary reduction for any one of those.
You can get a salary deduction, but a salary deduction doesn't do you any good if the person's not with that firm anymore.
Especially if they
It doesn't
don't work for government.
survive the loss of work, especially in a government circumstance. You get, every 5 years, potentially it changes, somebody else is in, you're out, new people in, now what?
there's no guarantee.
I got paid great for 5 years, now I got nothing.
Yeah, and that tends to be the case sometimes.
For some people.
For some people. Other people, no matter what, they keep following through. They come in and say, I've changed jobs, or they just continue paying. You don't even know they've changed jobs because they continue paying as usual. Other people, you can tell right away
Right.
that something has gone down.
But it's a risk in lending, I mean.
Of
you're
course.
making enough
And
money
that,
off
and that is one of the
lending.
risks.
The problem is making an informed decision.
That's all
And
you
to the
can do.
extent that you can make a truly informed choice, then great. But sometimes you cannot make an informed choice because the people that are in front of you lie. So you got an application, you try to independently verify, and what are your sources? Well, I can only go so far here because it's illegal to do any more.
Boy, yeah,
I have no,
verification can
I
be
have
tricky.
no, I have no source to really make sure. I mean,
We have some, but how far do you go and can you go that far?
yeah.
And should you go that far?
Apparently that's what they do at
Yeah.
CIBC.
And honestly, if they do pass some of the mortgage lending
They do it, but they
restrictions that
really
they're
do
talking
that.
about in terms of the collateral recovery, because at least on that side, you have sort of a surety that maybe I can get it back. If they take that part away, I don't know why anybody would lend $1 in this country.
Well, that's always the problem with
Because you
lending.
can't make an informed choice. You have to rely on that collateral.
And we have to rely on the extent to which we can verify. That's the other problem.
Yeah.
And that's part of what the credit risk is all about. Even with credit scores and all that kind of stuff, there's still risk. Yeah, there's still risk.
The rest.
The thing is, what we've been able to do in the Bahamas is, even though we've had some bad days and some aggy stuff, we handle some of our debt, blah, blah, blah. Because of the nature of our environment, we've still been able to go to other places and get a facility and blah, blah, blah. And we can do that in a small environment that we're in, still. In more developed countries, it's not that easy. to do it. Because now we have these very sophisticated scores that are running through the system anywhere through the country and all this kind of stuff, and at any moment in time, they could look at you independently. And it's a little more difficult. I'm not saying you can't bribe somebody or you don't have somebody you know who will do it. I'm just saying it's far more difficult in bigger environments than it is, say, here.
You also have the flip side too, though. When you're going to go out and borrow for that mortgage for the first time, they can look and say, well, you know what? You've never borrowed money for a mortgage, but you've paid off 2 car loans.
Of course.
You've had a credit card that you've operated for 15 years, no problem.
Definitely.
You've never been late on a utility
Yeah,
bill.
and for that history, you get 9 out of
You're a
10.
solid risk. I should take you on.
By all means, and that's how we make credit decisions generally.
That's how they make it, even if you being paid a commission.
Even if you make a
Whatever.
commission sometimes, but the commission tends to swing it a little bit, okay? But if somebody's been paying
I want
commission
to make that $4.
and they have a 10-year history and they've been paying well, then hey, we still give them the what? Benefit of a doubt, because their what? History is good, okay? She was dreaming about whatever, you know?
Tuna na salad.
She want to die. I guess somebody writes like that deserve to be concerned about something. Alright? So who messed up and who's responsible for fixing it? That's the question. The next W. Why did it go wrong? That's the big question. Because that's where we come up in trying to find out what? How we going to see how well you determine the problem will determine how well you resolve the problem. How soon you determine the nature of the problem will determine how soon you resolve it or whether you resolve it at all. Because remember, we have 2 types of doctors, they tell me. We have doctors who deal with problems, and then we have doctors who deal with symptoms. And if you're a lender or collector who deals more with symptoms than problems, you're gonna have a problem. Because you're gonna be spinning your wheels trying to figure out how to deal with those problem accounts. But if you find ways to find, okay, what is the source of the problem and go directly to the source. That's why a lot of times people cannot resolve personal disputes, because we're dealing with everything else except what? The real source of the problem. A lot of loans don't get collected because we're not dealing with the problem, we're just dealing with all the periphery. Same thing across the board. And then where do we go from? Wherever we are. And finally, what specific actions do we take? Do we foreclose? Do we take legal action? Do we send it to collection agency first? How long should we leave it there? And the list goes on and on. Should we call in a co-applicant? Should we call in somebody who can guarantee it and therefore we restructure it? You follow? And the list goes on and on. Yes, the customer is delinquent, but how dare us assume that because the customer is delinquent, everybody they're connected there too is delinquent. Therefore we can't call in any family members because all of them might be delinquent. We can't do that. We can't premeditate. We have to leave our minds what? Open, because you'd be surprised. Because the customers become what? Delinquent, become a problem account, they might have a relative who might say, you know what? I didn't know my sister was in this kind of trouble. Furthermore, she is my best sister. How are you going to know that unless you do what? Invite the situation to happen. Either initiate it, or if the customer says, I have a sister, you can't say, well, your sister's probably just as freaking irresponsible as you. We can't do that. If we're looking to profit, they all the family alike. Sometimes that's true, but not always. Okay? And so you might find, surprisingly, that you say, fine, have your sister come in. And you do an application, next thing you know, the sister could work. And then the sister tell you some stuff. Why didn't you guys call me a long time ago if my sister was in trouble? She's my favorite sister. I'll sign as co-applicant, guarantor, anything you want. And you can debit my account that I have with you from the $20,000 in the bank. What the hell? All because you did what? You went to this program and you kept your mind as open as possible. All right, you guys want to break to eat?
So why they
Grab
stop
some.
bringing the clothes?
Clothes
Still
up.
work on it.
What they used to do before?
It used to be in the clothes and container.
You made the food?
Yeah, right, package.
Saving money,
Who's
man.
gonna serve us?
Serve us.
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break, grab something, go back. We'll continue chatting while you munch. Kyle, Bianca,
Right?
we're still here. We're just taking a few minutes to
Tell them thanks for that donation. Yes, the more.
take a few minutes to organize something to eat. But we're still here.
Okay.
All right. Look at this guy. Who's that lady sitting behind the desk?
Person in charge.
Yeah, maybe the loan officer, but certainly the person in charge. And the lowly customer in front of her. Look at what she's saying. If you want to retire someday, you will need a quadruple bypass. First of all, you will need to bypass the sports car dealership, bypass the jewelry store, bypass the travel agency, and bypass the betting parlor. That's the number house. Why do you think that is so? Why did she tell him that? Because this financial situation is all so messed up. He can't expect to have retirement money if he wants to drive a sports car, buy expensive jewelry, fly around the world, and gamble.
No, we thought you could do that.
Some of us can do it and still retire in peace. The rest of us, if we could find $10,000 when we retire, we'll be doing great. Fabulous. That along with $252.73 for national insurance.
How much?
You could live a fabulous life, I guess. Because somebody was saying the other day, looks like national insurance wants to give people the bare minimum when they retire rather than the bare maximum.
Yeah.
They are giving the minimum, but so much you can prevent.
Wow.
They ain't gonna have nothing but a gun, so much to tell you.
Yeah, in another generation, it's going to be a problem.
Government spending all the money.
Those of us who retire in 10 years, maybe. But those of us who retire in 20 or 30, boy, that's a problem. Okay? That's a problem. All right. Okay, so how do we go about detecting these problem loans? Well, there are 4 steps. 4 key steps in successfully resolving problem loans. Well, let's see if that's true. First of all, there is early detection. Well, that's generic. Early detection of anything helps us to resolve it, so that must be true. All right? Identify what the problem is, recognize what it is. Once you've done that, then you can go to step 2. Gather, send it to CI First Caribbean's verification area. They'll verify the hell out of it.
Number dollar. That is not.
That's true.
Number dollar.
Verify that verify.
No, that's it. Yeah, this is not for the public domain. This is for the CCP domain. This is for our own edification. We can't go out and doggone. Let's go somewhere. All right. So once you detect it and recognize it, then you gather the. Notice you don't just gather any bunch of crap. You gather vital information that will help you do what? Find a way to resolve the problem. Then you analyze it. Who does the analyzing? Your best mind or minds. Sit down and look at this information and say, hey, what is the best way to deal with this? And that's how we get to step 4, the appropriate strategy. We need a co-applicant. Fine. But since this one is delinquent, maybe all the co-applicants are delinquent? No, not necessarily. Should we invite some persons? Yes. Should we ask the customer who's most likely to help them? Yes. And then you may find that it actually works. Sometimes. Not every time, but you have to go through the process for every single problem loan account until you get them all resolved or successfully gone, one way or the other. It's a big task. Alright? And if anybody offers you a job as a problem loan account officer one day, make sure that you are duly compensated because it will require much of you. Make no mistake about that. Don't say just a yippee. Something else to do. It will require much of you. And somewhere along the way you will make some friends, and somewhere along the way you will make some enemies. And if any of your clients are from Pinewood, you may not even make it to the next day. Okay? I'm serious. Ask what's in over here. Brenda.
Beverly.
I mean Beverly.
I can make it.
Yeah, Beverly's a ninja. She'll make it. If you're a ninja, you'll make it. If she'll stand up in front of the dog and find what was not look, yo. I'm from the hood too. Okay? And my uncle is your cousin, and your great grandfather is my cousin. Don't mess with me. Alright. What are the early warning signs? CCPs? The early warning signs, just like everything else. If you're dating somebody and they are not good for you, generally there are early warning signs to help you before the person becomes a what? Problem loan account. But sometimes we see the signs, we ignore them. Do you know that lenders sometimes see the signs and they ignore them? Do you know that collectors see the signs and they ignore them? We have this tendency, depending on the situation, to ignore stuff that we see it, but for some reason we do not want to acknowledge it. Okay? So what are the early signs? Signs of distress. Signs that problem loan accounts are coming. Signs that problem loan accounts are becoming more stagnant. Okay? Signs that a problem loan account or accounts that you were working and getting back on track is now what? Going back on drugs. That happens. Some accounts you start to do what? Bring them around, correct them, get them in order, and then suddenly something else happens and you're back to square one. Whatever the situation, the warning signs help us to decide what to do next. Alright, number one, a lack of financial awareness. And we are told that this may be seen as an inability by the customer to answer basic financial questions. So you ask your customer, what are your total assets, John? Man, I know. That means that he's probably not doing what? Preparing financial statements or not looking at them.
Not person would I would have very heavily on their accountants.
Of course.
So heavily. And they don't want anything like any financial question to ask their accountant.
And that's okay if you have an agent. But the problem is if you don't have an accountant and you don't know. See, if you have an accountant and you don't know but they know, that's fine. Even though it's good if you know something about it.
Supposed to know.
Oh, you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
But we know in the real world, we don't worry about things that have been delegated. Only some of us do that. Alright? And again, for some lenders, if they ask a basic question and the CEO does not know, and it's something the CEO ought to know, that for a lender, even though they may have an accounting or CFO, that is still a red flag. You follow? Because they want to know, yeah, we know you have a CFO, but where's your head? You're the one who is in charge. And you want to have at least some fundamental idea. Otherwise, that raises questions about how this firm is being what? Managed.
They should know because the CFO should still report in some respects to the CEO.
Absolutely. He should be getting reports from time to time on these kinds of basic financial information. What are your total liabilities? What percentage is the greater amount? Things like this you need to know. Where's the money coming from to pay? What's your cash flow position? Things like this you need to know. Okay? And if you don't know it all in your head, you need to be able to say 1 minute, right? Pull out the file or pull up the file. Either way, and say what it is. So if you can't answer, that's a red flag.
As a lender, you should really want to be talking to the person who can answer those questions.
Yeah, and as a lender, if the CFO can answer those questions, the CEO doesn't seem to have an idea, That's a double whammy. Because on the one far side, you're confident that the CFO can answer, and on the other side, you're discomforted that the CEO doesn't seem to be aware, doesn't seem to care. Boy, especially if you have millions and millions and millions of dollars outstanding, that can go what? Potentially bad. That's a big problem. Okay. Second warning sign, where the customer stops paying as agreed. See? Not just stop paying as agreed. The due date was the 10th, they keep coming in on the 13th, the 14th, the 11th, the 13th, the 11th. You see what I mean? Yeah, they're paying, but not as agreed. You need to find out why. Number 3. Wow. What do you think we mean by the new borrowings being requested, which will simply be used to pay down the trade? What is that?
New company borrowing money to pay down an outstanding debt with another supplier.
On a temporary basis, and then they keep doing, and then suddenly, what's supposed to be seasonal becomes what? Yeah, long term. And long term means that cash flow is going to be impacted, and cash flow impact means your loan is potentially in jeopardy. These are key. And again, this seasonal question in 3 is a function of whether you give a loan to a seasonal business. That's the other thing. And by George, you need to know up front when you're taking the application whether a business is seasonal or not. Boy, oh boy. It's easy to see why loan officers and adjudicators and so on need to be not only academically trained, but also experienced. They have to go through the rope, make some mistake, egg some stuff up, and grow, by all means. And be hanging around when things go completely and filthy bad. Because out of all that madness, you learn how to deal with the stuff going forward. Okay. I always tell my sons, don't do things that are completely stupid, but don't be afraid to make what? Of course, make the hell out of them. Because it is only through making mistakes oftentimes that we grow. Well, that's a fact. Woe be to the person who's seeking not to make any mistake ever. That's unrealistic and it's an egg. It's not even possible. And all it does is keep you tied up mentally, but oh God, I'm going to soon make a mistake. Why am I human? I should have been. Don't go there. Okay? Make them within reason. Brush off and learn from them. Simple as that. Number 4, trade debtors insisting on purchase money or consignment terms. Why is that a problem? Who are trade debtors? Trade debtors are suppliers. Who's a debtor?
But your accounts receivable, right?
Oh, who's receivable?
People who bought things from me that are paying me back on time, right?
Yes. So the trade debtors are people who you owe, who owe you?
Money.
Who owes you. So the trade debtor is insisting on either purchase money or consignment terms. What does that tell you as a warning sign? As a lender?
Like they having problems collecting their
Yes, that they're having problems collecting. Or even selling to collect, converting. Alright, so they're having problems collecting or they're problems converting. So they say, hey, look, send it on consignment because consignment means what? I only give you money whenever I?
Make money.
Yes, make money. So if you have somebody with a loan like that and they start converting to that kind of language, chances are something is going wrong. Don't go home and sleep and say you had a great day. Don't put that account back in the file and say, well, maybe it was just a coincidence. You better put that file on top of your desk where you can see it, because that's headed for trouble. Next, working capital deficit. Well, we know what that is. What is the formula for working capital again?
Current assets.
Current assets minus current liabilities. A deficit would mean that your liabilities are greater than your assets. If you see that, it's likely that there will be cash flow problems. And where there are cash flow problems, your loan or loan facilities are in jeopardy. Similarly, trade payables are being stretched Payables are what you owe or who owe you?
What do you owe?
What you owe now. As a result, you start making all kinds of inquiries to the creditor. Getting a little volatile. What is that telling the creditor? That you're running into trouble somewhere and you're looking for what? A way out. You're looking to buy some time. You're looking to buy some time until you can pay. Alright, what about the next one? A contiguous inability to meet projections. Well, maybe the projections may have been unrealistic, that's possible. However, outside of that, it suggests either that you're not working to meet that standard, or your forecasting methods are poor, or both. Either way, it's a problem for the lender. The lender is going to eventually run into problems because poor forecasting means that your cash flow is likely to be what? Up or down? Down considerably. And down considerably means, oh boy, reduction in sales volume. That is not part of the normal history of the company. That's trouble. Because the reduction in sales volume has something to do with market share loss. Because would you ever own a private business on there like your own business? No. You did, yeah. And there's nothing, let's say you own a cleaning company and you have 3 clients. Oh, thank God. I'm just saying. I'm making a couple dollars. 3 whole separate clients. Thank you, Jesus, for the couple dollars. Alright? And then for 1 year everything went well. You got a bank loan from First Caribbean. No, that's not paying up. Bank of the Bahamas then.
Might as well.
And everybody else. and all that stuff. And then suddenly 18 months later, one of your beloved clients say that they're not signing up with you anymore that year. Have you lost market share? Yes, you have. Not only have you lost market share, but you've also lost the revenue from that client. And if your revenue, if you are relying on the revenue from that client to help you meet your commitment to the bank, ultimately any bank who's asking questions and blah 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 will come to find out that hey, that's why that loan is suffering.
What do you think about the scenario where you are, okay, in that same case of loss of market share,
Yes.
and you're the lender and you preview all this information.
Yes.
This borrower comes to you now, says, okay, so now I need to borrow some more money so I can increase my marketing so that I can regain my market share.
Oh man, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's very tricky, because it may not work.
Mr. Hanna, that is an unfair question, but it's an excellent one. The question is, what does the lender do then? And the answer is, it depends. If this customer can give you enough information to satisfy you that that marketing program will go out to such a place and time and circumstance that will see market share increase or new market share evolve, then perhaps you might consider some percentage of his request. See again, if he needs 10 billion to do it, you might say, based on his, yeah, I'll give you 4. If that doesn't work, then we only need the whole 4 million along with the other 39 million you owe. You see what I mean? Rather than the next a whole 10 million. Alright? If he doesn't make the 4 million, and then when you give him the 4 million, you can't just give him the 4 million and say, go and do it. No. What do you have to do? You have to control it now and make sure that the expenditure is going where? For the intended purpose. That's another thing lenders tend to do. Sometimes. Make the money available, but do not monitor what it's being used for. And oftentimes, customers are like governments. Governments say they're collecting money for one thing, and they're using it for something else. I'll give you an example. Suppose, does anybody have a calculator? What is $300? How many cars do you have registered in the Bahamas?
Well, I saw a
Roughly.
license plate, 287,000, something, I don't know.
Okay, let's say 250,000 then. Registered vehicles. times $300. Can that fit on anybody's calculator?
$75 million.
How much? 75 million. Million?
Is that right?
Million? $300 times 250,000 people.
Times 250.
That should be about right.
75 million?
Now, folks, let me just ask you guys a real question. For real now. How many of our roads you think we can get fixed properly tarred for 75 million? All! So why the hell, not just one time, why the hell we still flying over holes on Mackey Street, bursting ourselves to the bone? Why don't we take 1 year? Everybody who has a car pays $300 and take all the money and only fix the road. 1 year.
Money will fix the road.
Well, that's what it means, Jackie. They don't do what they say they can do. They collect the 75 million and do some other crap. And then we're still flying over the place somewhere.
They put all that money in the same pot.
That's what I'm saying. Don't put it in the same pot. That's why I keep saying, we are seriously joking. Most Bahamians can pay $300 one time. Some cars are more. I'm just averaging it. So if everybody pays that, we get it, that means we can fix all our roads.
What is the money now? Would you pay to license your car?
Sorry.
What is the money would you pay?
That's my point. What are we doing with it? Because we still have roads that,
When you want to borrow, then do something.
when I go on Mackey Street, I have to drive at 1 mile an hour, press the gas a little bit and fetch. The roads are so bad. Mackey Street, no less. And Mackey Street was like that from I was a little boy going to Kentucky Fried Chicken when it was 95 cents right on Mackey Street.
Well, they didn't fix it since then.
No,
They never fixed it?
never. Doggone it.
That's like Mackey Street.
Oh, yeah. How did I get so distracted? Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. We can get done whatever we have the will to do. And notice, who is $300 gonna kill?
No one.
No one. Even these little teeny boppers who jive and can pay that. You know, the young tellers have all kind of money to play with.
Club.
Yeah, they clubbed that out in one night. And we still around here bouncing around on bad roads, 21/7. We cannot be. How did I get on that? Okay. What was I saying before I got there? Let's say, ain't nobody can punch at.
Yeah, the strong and loss. The next one.
Did I say anything about financial statements?
What time is it? The clock is in here. What time you up, Mr.
9:01. It's 8:09.
Yeah.
No, you know, you guys so to speak.
One thing I like about Bev though, what you see is what you get. She ain't like, you don't have to try and feel like, who that is? Bev is Bev. Bev is Bev here. Bev is Bev over there. Bev is Bev in church. Bev. Everybody said, I'm Bev, don't worry about it. Don't stress us, Beverly. And what do I do?
It's me on catastrophic loss.
Do we have any tech people in here? Anna, you tech
Little
person?
side arrow.
The opposite side of what arrow?
What you press, that's the opposite.
Just
I
say
one.
didn't press anything, did I?
Yes, you did.
So I try call group.
Try what?
Say it then.
What did you do?
Minimize.
Minimize.
Are they still there?
No, when you go on back. Go
God.
forward, go forward.
Oh yeah,
Right,
okay.
catastrophic.
So where did the Skype people go?
You're still
It's
there.
the left.
Okay.
Don't worry about them, worry about them.
No, you can't say that.
Yes, I can. It's almost 8:30.
You don't need none.
Yeah. You don't remember.
This chick is a typical behemoth. That's why we hate to feed behemoth. But it's thing to get done. Because once we eat, we like, you can can't look at that. Boy, this I tell you, baby, was a trip, man. Okay, where was I before she did come?
Catastrophic loss.
She jumped to the middle. Okay, what about, before we get to catastrophic loss, what about delays in delivering statements or having a qualified statement? Is that a problem for lender?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. If the lender says we need your statement within 4 months and folks keep rolling in the 6 month and 7 month, something's going down.
Trying to hide something.
Where? What? Why is it late? Okay? And in your audit, they always have some kind of audit qualification. Boy, if they have audit qualification, better read it and read it close.
Bank of Bahamas.
Again, that's our local Enron.
Swear that. Can't be ever be low.
They actually get a qualified report?
Who, Bank of Bahamas?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Financial
surprised.
statements, did it have a
Financial statements unqualified.
They're
They're
not qualified.
unqualified? A bank
No.
of the Bahamas?
Don't tell me. Let me say, this is the company you did the
That you
audit.
know.
I wonder. I mean,
If that is so, then it's,
if the financial statements make the appropriate disclosure for the accounts that were found to be incorrect, they should not have a qualification.
no, they should not.
Because
But-
they would have met with the accounting standards and it would have met with
Yeah,
their
they-
audit and their
yeah.
testing.
If
Fair enough.
they did do that, but we don't really know if they did. I guess we have to have a look. All we know is the board hasn't met since November.
They say they allowed 2 extension, and deadline is the 31st of March, and they allowed 2 extensions.
So they extended that into another thing. Is that a warning sign?
Yes.
Of course. We have a real life case. And I think for future business classes, and we need to cite that as a credible business case. Because that's a classic case of the catastrophic loss. Like Beverly said. What is a catastrophic loss from our business operations anyway? According to we won't go there. Catastrophic loss, what can cause that?
Fire.
Fire, of course.
Embezzlement.
Yes, embezzlement even. Alright, don't think that everybody smiling is honest.
Well, if I take all my money out the account of the bank, everybody take the money
Or
out.
run on the account, that would be catastrophic, by all means.
That's what they say
Natural
happened there.
disaster.
Not any natural disaster. Running on the bank. If that wasn't a government bank, it may have been closed by now. Because everybody would have gone and taken out their money.
People are taking their money out.
I know, but the government can always keep it beefed up.
Where you get it from?
Thing up,
They borrow it.
300 times.
They borrow it.
But luckily, there's the
That's what
deposit
national
insurance.
insurance is for.
Yes,
Deposit insurance.
our pension money.
Take the pension monies and
Yeah,
sit
our
private shares.
pension money. Okay? Let me ask you guys something. Does anybody know, let's say when you retire at 65, let's say, and your salary was $5,000 at the time you retired, what is the pension that is due to you? Does anybody know?
I know that's like
An average amount to be due based on the.
Less than 500? For 30 years of contributions? You would make less than five. Come on.
You mean
Because,
NIB.
think about it, even
No,
though
it's
you
based on
five.
your contribution, no.
I'm just saying you make the list.
There's a cap.
Yeah, that's
So you don't pay
the
$101, so you can't expect to get $2,500 a month.
You get whatever the maximum is.
And what is the maximum?
6 something is.
All that? Sure.
Take on.
6 something?
That's
I know,
what
I-
they're looking at.
But 6 something can't even pay your light bill.
Thank you.
How could we call it a pension? We need to do what to the Pension Act? Amend it?
Yeah, they have to spend, not to give people when they.
Thank
So
you.
somebody's getting warm now.
I
We
get
call
you.
it pension to appease them. Cause a ceiling of $500 or $600, like by the time you retire, light bill will be $400. Then what?
You say there's a cap on contribution too. So,
You only do a maximum amount.
so it's proportionate. So you take the rest of your money and you go to
Okay.
check those
Right.
company
And take
and
no
you,
real pension.
Invest.
you invest it.
Well, that's what
Assuming you have
regulars-
that discipline, if you don't have that discipline, don't put it aside.
Yeah,
for
regular
yourself.
people that don't
All of
even
a sudden
think
you
about
get
that.
yourself, and then you take an early retirement package.
Yeah.
And not everybody has the opportunity of early retirement package. What the hell is that? That's only for the privileged few who get the good fortune of having an early retirement package. Especially since only 25% of companies in the Bahamas offer a pension fund, period.
That's it?
That's it. All that.
I know that.
See that? All that. Be lucky. Lucky you. But that other 75 or 60% of people or whatever, they are not getting a pension. That's why when the government talked about the pension situation the other day, people thought that the government was going to make it mandatory that there's a minimum pension plan implemented by all firms.
They put that under the back burner.
The same one.
Nobody realized the rules. That's what we want now.
So I'm saying, folks thought that government would have made it mandatory for employers to have a pension plan. Period. It's not optional anymore. If you have a business, you must have a pension plan. That's what folks thought was going to happen. And somebody talked somebody out of something, so no bill came. Alright? So a company shouldn't have the option to have a pension. Or some companies say, well, save your money. Well, then, okay, fine. But the reason why we have a pension plan is because it doesn't happen that way. If everybody was that conscious, then there'd be no need for a pension fund at all.
No, you could save your money, but the employer makes a contribution on behalf of the staff.
Yeah.
Which means at the end of the day, you will get.
I know, but the objective at the end of the day is a couple of bucks. What I'm saying is, if everybody was that disciplined, including the employer, there'd be no need. But it's not mandatory. And so, if you don't save a couple of bucks, that's it. Take your little 300, whatever,
Take people money anyhow.
from NIB. How the heck? $500. Is that catastrophic? I think so.
Yeah.
Alright, the next point, key personnel are leaving. That's the Titanic, I call it the Titanic. Except on the Titanic they weren't leaving, they were forced. But if you have a loan outstanding with millions of dollars as a lender with a particular firm, and every other week a key personnel resigns, is that a red flag?
Oh, yeah.
If you're collateral, you better do what?
Yeah.
Maybe. But certainly you need to call in so people quit and say, what the hell's going on? And let them prove to you that that is just what? A change of the guard. That the company is still well and good. But don't take Tingham words for it, because remember, CEOs are like politicians.
Yeah, Jesus.
They can't make a decent debit and a credit entry because they don't have to. Their job is not to pass an entry. Their job is to what? Lie through their teeth and run off with as much money as humanly possible. That's not in the notes, but anyway. Why do we say that? Because that seems to have been the trend over the last whatever decades. People have been doing that since forever. Alright, next point. Industry-wide downturn, that's a problem. When the markets crashed, a lot of banks lost a lot of money. That's how we ended up with all these problem loans. Some of them are still sitting there. Regulatory problems. BOB again. That's a classic case. Who the hell's going to write that case up? I'll write it for a fee. But who's going to give me a fee? They said, man, you want money for everything? But other people are running off with what?
Thank you.
Millions for nothing. But they don't want to pay you and you and you and you a couple of bucks for drawing up and doing something constructive. I wonder why. You don't need it, that's why. Okay? Because a check came from a well-to-do family, doesn't need it. Hannah, he's probably related to A.D. Hannah, he doesn't need it. This chick who squiggles, he's probably married to a doctor, she don't need it. Beverly definitely don't need it. And
Yeah, we don't know what to do with that.
no,
Not 2 years, but still fighting for our pension.
let's fight to keep the pension. Oh, my mother's sick.
I never sent you my note.
Wow. What about this thing about third-party decisions? How could that affect your loans? Third-party decisions that might have a what? Negative impact, such as a new generation computer. How could that affect?
You have to go over and make all the business.
Well, and then what happens?
Then you can't be alone.
can make your operations obsolete.
Absolutely. And there can be significant downturns as a result of that. Okay. And then, of course, secure debt payment, what? Defaults. Oh my God. These kinds of things are early warning signals. If you see them and you have money outstanding, go get you. Hurry up and get your collateral, call your people in, call in the troops, do something, because something is going down. And that doesn't mean that you should panic every single time, but at least you should call in or visit your people and ask them and try and find out what's going on. Yeah, I'll do the Marvin thing.
So what can happen now? People taking their money out of the bank. What could they do damage?
In the Bank of Bahamas?
Yeah, damage control.
For damage control? Not much at the moment, except take every step possible to rectify the situation, start telling people what's true, start operating in the bank in a correct manner, so the people who are around them, who are blowing the whistle, can see. Yes, and they will stop when they see you doing something to change it.
So the person who's on the whistle in the bank?
More than likely. One or more. They're tired of the injustices. They're tired of the madness. That's usually when whistleblowers kick in. They can't take it anymore. And if somebody didn't blow the whistle, we'd still not know.
That's true.
Millions would have gone down quietly. And we wouldn't be better. And it's our money, because it's the taxpayers' money. That's how serious it is. Again, maybe we don't see it that way because it doesn't impact our pocketbooks directly. But it does impact our pocketbooks indirectly through VAT and taxes and other government spending. Such that when they run out, they're going to have to find ways to get more from us.
And the minority of people just cause so much hardship very much.
Always.
I just don't
Always.
get that.
This thing about a minority of people doing it, that's an amazing phenomenon. And I always, whenever I hear that expression, I always think about Adolf Hitler. How the hell he was able to persuade a small little gang. Well, his army was on a small gang. But I'm saying, how in the world did he pull that off? That he could persuade all those to totally annihilate human beings to that extent. And nobody got mad and sneak up on him like this. Take that, yo. Why didn't somebody do that? Like after he killed the first 100,000, how come somebody didn't say, this is atrocious? I don't like Jews, but this is atrocious. Even if you have a prejudice.
Yeah.
But still, something has to go beyond your prejudice, like see what I mean? And so so how we can resolve the Bank of the Bahamas? We have to actually start doing things to fix the problem and give the appearance that we're dealing with it and persuade people that we are doing it.
That's all they have to make politicians pay. That's all.
Make them pay.
Make them pay.
Dope.
Make them pay.
They so punched on. What do you think? The statement by the Prime Minister in the House at the Island lady. From first term,
Yeah.
What was
Okay.
the reputation of
There is a reputation issue.
Yeah.
It should never have happened.
No, I think that's sense not to repeat that.
It's amazing that that was even said. God knows what's going to happen to Rodman Allen. If she gets away with it, should she be allowed to get away with it? Since it's already in the public domain, we can discuss it. Should she? The Prime Minister called and said, stop the bailiff. Does she have the right to stop the bailiff?
No, this is a separate entity.
In her organization, it's a separate entity. It's already gone beyond her authority.
No, I mean, not necessarily, but I mean, she's the overhead, right?
So she has the authority to stop it. But is it ethical to do
No,
so?
it's not.
No.
It's
I
not.
mean, we have the sense not to even mention that man. I
Yeah.
just think he's just finished. He just needs to,
People saw it.
Who, the bailiff?
Yeah.
Yeah, what would you go there
Man, I
and
got-
mention that man? Somebody do you a favor, right? You can go and brag on that.
Thank you.
What dope. Jesus. Talk about problem loan management. That's a serious thing. If she gets to keep a job, that would be an interesting thing. Because under the old Westminster system, that would not happen. God knows what's gonna happen. They say, they called it in Canada, I don't know. Is she in Canada now?
Why?
We don't know. But that's gonna be interesting to see how that pans out. Okay. That's kind of a problem loan account in itself, isn't it? All right, and last but not least for this evening, okay? Yes, lady, I gotta get out of here. She's ready to go.
Keys on the table.
Yeah. All right, couple of key predictors to take with you for next week. If you are looking at paperwork and you discuss and you detect a weakness somewhere, that is a prediction that something is wrong. I suspect if you go to Bank of the Bahamas' files and have a look at them, you might be devastated to see what kind of information is in there, if any. That's the other thing. All right? If there's any deterioration in the collateral base, that is a predictor that you have a problem loan to manage. Wherever your collateral starts to deteriorate, if you cannot fix the matter with your customer, then you need to do what? Absolutely. Move in on it, get the best price possible, and go forward. Do not romanticize about it. Yes, you call the customer in to see if you can fix the problem, but after you've done that, if it cannot be done, move on it, and move on it quickly. Don't even sleep. Okay? And if it happens to be night, sleep quick and get up. The first thing you do is that. And do it early. Did I make my point? Alright? And then number 3, extended use of credit. Why is that a predictor that there's a problem?
Because you promised on
Yes. Okay? Yeah, if somebody's overdraft is stagnant, and you do what? Renew it.
Right.
Without taking steps to make sure that they could do what? Handle it. Then all you're doing is compounding the problem and making it worse and worse, not only for your customer, but also for yourself. All right, have a great week. I'll see you next time when we will close up with a couple of interesting points about how to fix your problem loans. In the meantime, $300 times 250,000 people, all of our roads are fixed. Simple as that. And we might even have money left over to do some potholes somewhere else. And if you don't have enough left over, then skip a year and then the year after that, do it again.
Call Jose Carter bonus.
Okay.
He said, oh, está bien. Más dinero en Bahamas de vez en cuando. More money coming. Enjoy your weekend. Bien. Carla. Take care. Bianca. Hello. Yeah, they did the right thing there, over there. Yes, problem loan accounts, very interesting. Imagine what could be done if all that money was paid up. Yeah, it's a tragedy of major proportions. And you can't really get any feedback about what folks are really going to do, and what is really happening, just a little bits and pieces that come out here and there. And it's such a tragedy, millions and millions and millions, millions.
They say with people in 2009 about 2014, it was like 15 to
For $20 million. Oh my God. Good evening. Yeah, use it. Because I need to see how your hand looks when you're doing it. Oh, good. Well, that's looking a little bit better. Okay, okay.
Let me see what you up. What you was gonna show? With that? This one, cause in the
Is that that?
yeah.
Well, this is how you write it when you really want to write it well. But if you're just like sketching stuff out for a piece of paper, then we have the hieroglyphics that we have here. Isn't that interesting? like, I'm bringing I get that. But this is your like informal. I don't want anybody to know who that is. Take care.
Okay.
I don't know if it's my eyes changing or whatever, but I find as I get older, my writing gets worse.
Yeah. It's a combination of getting older and age.
I know.
I go back and
And look at
oftentimes
something
look
like,
at stuff, I go, what in the world did I write?
that's right. Tell me about it. My students.
I know
teach
it made
all the
sense to me
time.
when I put it down, but I don't know what it is now.
I know exactly what you mean. Jackie, you have a moment?
Yes, sir. Most certainly.
I know exactly what you mean, Jack. We're getting older, that's a big part of the issue. Whether we like it or not.
Sorry,
Okay.
next week?
Yeah.
We're here also, yeah.
Yeah, next week, same time.
Okay.
Okay, that's our final session.
Good night.
Okay, take care. Okay. Now, I don't know, has anybody actually discussed these concepts in the session tonight?
Like some of them, like some of these.
Yeah.
Some of them, I think is.
Or maybe didn't come up, because some of these are very specific and may not have been discussed in terms of how to apply them to a decision. See what I mean? Because if it was discussed like that, probably would have been a little more keen on how to handle them.
Some of them,
I know probably did some like threats companies, okay, we've seen that. But in terms of how premises and stuff, how these things apply, you may not have had that. But what I wanted to show you. Okay. Did you read this? Section here. This assessment.
this one, yeah, this was the one here, that is
Right.
follow that format.
Right. This assessment was done on
Something
which
else.
company?
Cool.
Kulta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this is actually a pretty good outline on how you should approach this question. And here's what I mean. Okay. It's not exactly like this thing, but for you to even try and use another approach, be like almost reinventing the wheel. This here is kind of like the format that you should follow, but using this information. You see? So what I would suggest you do, for example, let's see, your question was, this is your question, I imagine. Okay. Now make a summary of your lending decision. And so, if I were you, I would start off. You see how the initial thing starts with assessment using Campari.
Yeah.
All right. Now, if we go, it's going to take you how long?
Yeah, I started.
Oh, you started already. Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
started that one already.
Okay. This is like this.
Yeah.
And see,
Started.
it starts with character.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, from what I can see here, it does give a breakdown of the information here that you gained. Let's see if they talk about it. Yeah, exactly. So what you should do is follow this step by step in terms of what is required here.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, this is sufficient financial statement, sufficient, as their forecast, but then, I know forecast cash flow.
Uh-huh. Yeah, profit and loss balance sheet. You can kind of, do they have a forecast cash flow? I thought I saw that somewhere. It's a balance sheet, profit and loss. Yeah, cash flow, okay? And again, what you want, let me see if they said anything here about it. The debt. Now that's what I want. See, what I would like for you to do is to, first of all, you've started already. Follow this process. Okay? Follow this process in terms of all these steps. Okay? And then when you would have done that, and then you can with a little bit of information you have on cash flow and the income statement and the balance sheet, make your best assessment of whether or not they are good or bad, cash flow is good or bad. Okay? When you've done, put all of that together, then let me see it.
Okay.
Okay? Don't worry about whether it's perfect, you're completely happy with it, none of that. Just put it all together, using the structure at the back, come up with your own conclusion, why you think they cannot pay based on what you see. And then let me have a look at it again. And then I'll say, yeah, okay, I agree with you, you can change that, make it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
That's fine.
Because I already started.
Perfect. And again, use this format to the greatest extent possible until you get to the numbers. And then when you get to the numbers, then you can, first of all, you can kind of look at this and say, okay, based on this forecast profit and loss account, the profit position seems to be what? Positive. Okay, that's a good sign. All right, the balance sheet seems to be strong. However, when you get to cash flow, you might look at this and say, whatever, you follow? Yeah, to see the receipts are 13,638, the payments are 14. So yes, you have a negative cash flow. Yes, yes. And everything you could find on cash flow and why negative cash flow is a bad thing, find it and build it based on that and use this to support it.
Okay.
So even though the forecast looks good, that's only a forecast. That may or may not happen. But based on what is forecasted for cash flow, it doesn't look, for example, like this.
The payment can be more than the receipts.
Exactly. So there's a potential that your loan will not be serviced well, blah, blah, blah. And unless the company can show that they don't have enough cash flow, something, that's how you do it. And that's after you've done all the initial legwork.
Okay.
Okay? Absolutely. Using all your spots and your Camparis and all that stuff, do all that. And they have some very good analogies that you can use. Like, for example, in your character, where you're building, if blah, blah, blah is a new company, you say that. If it's not, you just say it's an existing company, blah, blah, blah. And then you just kind of use that language to help you build each category. Okay? Relative to your company. Yeah. And then, let me see it. Okay? And then we go from there. All right? You're welcome. When is it due? On Monday? Okay, how far have you gotten percentage-wise towards completion?
Probably about, I think, 50%.
About 50%?
Yeah.
Okay, so you should be finished somewhere around the weekend then.
Yeah.
All right. So if you can get it to me like Saturday or so, or even worst case scenario on Sunday before evening
Okay.
or before, that would be good. And give me a chance to look at it, just make some notations based on what I see, and get it right back to you. You can make whatever adjustment that might be.
Okay.
Okay?
Perfect.
No problem. Just remember to include as much detail as you can without quote unquote, like the old people say, running off course.
Okay.
But anything that is relevant,
Uh-huh.
use it,
Okay.
okay, to build your case. That's really the key.
Thank you. The steak is really good.
The steak is good?
Nice and tender.
You're kidding me. You mean steak that I can actually eat?
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. You don't find that everywhere.
No, nice.
Okay, Jackie, good luck and I'll wait to hear from you. Okay, take care.